Welcome back, everybody. It is time once again for another edition of the Blitz Boys podcast here on the Jack Wagon Sports Network. Normally, it's Slade and I here. Slade is currently in Mexico enjoying a little vacation. So it's just going to be me with you guys today. We're going to walk through week 9 and talk a little bit about it and get you ready for week 10 as well. We have a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and dive right into this week's episode. Just a quick reminder, we do this every Thursday morning. We also put out a weekly college football stock market, a weekly college football award show, and then on Saturday mornings, we do our pregame show live on our YouTube. Streaming is called Out of the Tunnel. So make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you drop a like and a subscribe for more content. Let's go ahead and get this week's episode of the Blitz Boys started. Alrighty, everybody. On Tuesday night, while I was handing out candy for trick or treating, the College Football Playoff Committee released their first rankings of the 2023 season. So I just want to take a moment. Let's look at these and go over it, and I'll just give you my initial thoughts from it. Um, the top four, I don't really have a problem with. I would put Florida State ahead of Michigan. I understand Michigan, they're blowing out their opponents and they're doing what they're supposed to. But Florida State has had a better resume, in my opinion, and I think with them putting it number one, or Ohio State at number one, excuse me, they're saying that the resume really matters and it counts for things, which has always kind of been their mantra. But putting Ohio State at number one, and they've had a couple tighter than should be games, I would say. Um, and Florida State is in much of the same boat, but I feel like Florida State has played a much more difficult schedule than what Michigan has. I agree with Ohio State being number one. I think that's absolutely where they belong. Georgia at number two, especially with how they played this past weekend. Again, I'm fine with that. My only thing I would flip with the top 4 is just Florida State, Michigan, but it's nitpicking at that. And then we have Washington, Oregon. I'm fine with that, 5 and 6. What the national media is putting a lot of attention on Oregon, and as an Oregon fan, it makes me very nervous, especially knowing how we normally play in November. We play 2 what I would call subpar opponents, in the upcoming weeks. We play Cal this weekend. And excuse me, I always say we play. Oregon plays Cal this weekend, and then they have USC at home, and then after that, they go to Arizona State. Arizona State's a pretty good football team. So is Cal. Cal just gave USC a run for their money. But usually it's the Arizona teams that trip up Oregon, especially in November. What was it, 2019? Oregon had a shot at the playoffs. Outside of losing in week one, ironically to Bo Nix, they were undefeated up until that point. They go on the road to Arizona State, and then they lose that game. And so please God, don't let that be a repeat this season. But I am still extremely nervous. They're a very good football team. They're playing very well. I'm still extremely nervous for what lies ahead. 7, 8, 9 is a little controversial, because it almost seems like they kept Texas ahead of Alabama because of a head-to-head win, but Oklahoma drops back behind Texas even though they have a head-to-head win with Texas. Um, I would personally flip that, put Oklahoma at 7, Texas 8, Alabama 9. Um, I feel like that'd be fine there. My other concern or issue, I guess, with this top 10 is Ole Miss being at 10. I really feel like their one big opponent they played this season was Alabama, and they lost that on the road. I know they also played LSU, and that was a tight game. Um, I ju- I just feel like Ole Miss at 10 is a little high, but again, I feel like that is nitpicking. Where 7, 8, 9, again, like I said, I would flip. I think Oklahoma deserves to be ahead. I understand they just lost on the road at Texas, and they struggled the week before, but I mean, Texas looked really bad against Houston the week before. And all of a sudden they go out and they blow out BYU, and obviously they look good there. But again, just with the head-to-head win, I would put Oklahoma at 7, Texas at 8, Alabama 9. Um, Moving down the list, Missouri at 12. I'm very shocked to see them that high. I'm perfectly fine with that. But again, just a little shocked to see that there. Louisville at 13. I'm fine with that. We had Notre Dame ahead of Louisville in our personal rankings. just strictly because Louisville's loss to Pitt is a really bad loss. And that was the main reason we dropped them down below Notre Dame, even though they had a head-to-head win. Notre Dame is, they have 2 losses that are to ranked teams, one of them being the number 1 team right now in the college football playoff poll, the other one being to Louisville, but Louisville got their butts whooped by Pitt, and so for that reason, it was a bad loss in our eyes, and so that's why we had Notre Dame ahead of them. Oregon State at 16, I would personally have them a little bit lower with 2 losses on the season already, and one of those losses is looking worse and worse by the week to Washington State. Tennessee at 17, I don't agree with at all. I don't think Tennessee's that good. I don't think they should be anywhere close to the top 15. Um, Utah at 18, I understand it. I personally think they should be a little bit lower, especially with how bad they got beaten this past week by Oregon. If it was a close loss, I'd say, yeah, that's fine. Keep them up there a little higher. That's fine. But 18, I feel like it's pushing it. UCLA at 19, fine. USC at 20, USC is a team that I don't understand why they're still getting the leash that they are. 2 ugly losses, back to back, getting blown up by Notre Dame on the road, and then losing the last second field goal to Utah at home. And then this past week, they should have lost that game to Cal. Obviously a great fourth quarter comeback, and then Cal goes for 2 with 58 seconds left to try and take the lead and hopefully win the game. USC at 20, I don't like. Kansas at 21, feel like it's a little high. Their losses have not really been close losses. They lost pretty bad to Texas at the beginning of the season, and then the team they're ahead of, Oklahoma State, beat them. That was a 7-point game, but still, and again, back to the head-to-head matchups. I'm okay with Oklahoma State being ranked. There has been a lot of controversy, um, because they had that 33-7 loss to South Alabama. My only complaint, I guess, is how I would put it, um, with Oklahoma State being ranked is I just don't like that they're ranked ahead of the group of 5 teams here. It almost feels like to me that the playoff committee just threw Tulane and Air Force in there just to say, well, we ranked 2 group of 5 teams. They are 2 teams that are better than that. Tulane's one loss is to the number 10 team in the country. They had their backup quarterback, and I mean it was a close, hard fought game until late, and they trying to get back in the game, trying to get a couple scores and turnovers, and Ole Miss gets the ball inside the 30-yard line. Um, so I would like to see Tulane and Air Force higher, and Oklahoma State ahead of Kansas, I think is another, um, change I would make to that as well. So honestly, I put Tulane at 20, Air Force at 21, and then do Kansas or Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and if you still wanna rank USC, then you can rank USC at 25. Um, but that's how I would change the playoff rankings and just looking at it. Obviously, it's the first one. I mean, we still have a few weeks to go here in the season, so it's not an end all be all ranking. But just looking at the first top 25, that's what I would change about it. Um, Moving on, with the next topic, we're going to talk about Brian Ferentz has finally been relieved of his duties, or at the end of the season, he will be relieved of his duties as the Iowa offensive coordinator. Ferentz took over in 2017 after Greg Davis retired, and it has been tough sledding ever since then. Uh, I've looked at the total offense rankings. The last 3 years, Greg Davis was there, and then what it's been like every year since Brian Ferentz took over. So the last 3 seasons, Greg Davis was there. They ranked 71st, 54th, and 95th in total offense. The year they ranked 54th, they almost went to the playoff. They lost the Big Ten championship game to Michigan State, in the last minute. And then Brian Ferentz takes over in 2017, and they ranked 117th, 92nd, 99th. In 2020 was his best year, and they ranked 88th. And again, I don't think that counts. I don't think the COVID year counts for anything because of how many teams sat out the season, how many players sat out the season. But the COVID year was his best seasonal ranking, for total offense. And then in 2021, he ranked 123rd. 2022 was 123rd as well. And this season so far, Iowa ranks dead last in total offense with at 130. There's 133 FBS teams, but James Madison, Sam Houston State, and Jacksonville State don't get ranked in statistical categories yet. So I saw some other people talking about, well, this is good that he's finally going to be gone, but Iowa's offense has been bad for a very long time. I mean, 2017 when he took over, yeah, they were horrible. The year before that, 95th, obviously not the greatest. Iowa's never had an explosive offense, and I agree with that. I really feel like, and Slade and I have kind of talked about this a little bit. The the era of the Big Ten offense is just being we're going to line up in I formation, just run it down your throat. I think are dying. Iowa is really one of the last remaining teams that does that. Even Wisconsin has moved on to kind of the spread style air raid offense. Nebraska, again, same thing. They can line up and run and deny, but they really like to run out of spread. Um, Iowa's the last of its kind, and hopefully with the new offense coordinator, we see changes like that. But the other issue is the style of player that Iowa recruits. Is that really going to be able to fit into that style of system? And whoever this new offense coordinator or whatever this new offense coordinator brings in system wise, is it going to be able to fit the personnel? So I think there's definitely going to be growing pains for at least 2 years with whoever Iowa brings in, unless they get a huge wave of transfers. Um, but that I think, regardless, Brian Ferentz is the worst thing happening in Iowa right now. I really feel like they have solid talent there, and just the watching this scheme is like pulling your eyeballs out because it is not good at all. It's horrible to watch, um, and I really feel like Pee Wee coaches do a better job of coaching their offense than what Brian Ferentz has done. I'm you never like to see a guy get fired, but this was long overdue. They set these statistical markers for him to hit this season. I think it was he had to have at least 7 wins, and he had to have 25 points per game. He is well off the 25 points per game mark. 7 wins is still obviously possible for Iowa, and I think they do get there. Um, and they're still in contention for the Big Ten West, so that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Because as always, the Big Ten West is just it's a crapshoot, and it's full of entertainment across the board. Um, Speaking of conferences and divisions that are crapshoots, we're going to look at the Big 12 now. So we brought it up going over the rankings. We talked about Oklahoma's loss and how it's going to affect or how it affected the college football playoff standings. Well, let's look at how it's affecting the Big 12 standings here. Slade and I talked about this after the Red River rivalry with Texas and Oklahoma. We said Texas and Oklahoma, they're set on a clear path to meet again towards the end of the season or at the end of the season for the Big 12 championship. Um, since then, obviously, Oklahoma just lost this past week, but there's a lot of surprising contenders that have kind of sprouted up. Um, when we talked at the time, we thought maybe West Virginia and Texas Tech because they were both looking pretty good at that point. That hey, maybe these are 2 teams that end up competing and disrupting um, the Big 12 championship prediction of Texas versus Oklahoma rematch. But now you have Oklahoma State, who has really come out of nowhere, I feel like, and played very well the past couple of weeks. Um, they obviously upset Kansas State and Kansas, and I really feel like Oklahoma State looks very good. And now they're heading in. They have to play Bedlam. This is going to be in Stillwater this weekend. A huge rivalry game. The last time the Bedlam game will be played for some amount of time. We're not exactly sure how long, if ever, it'll be played again. And so there's a lot riding, not just nationally and uh, you know divisions or conference standings and college football playoff race wise, like this game means so much to both schools this weekend. It is going to be a ton of fun to watch. I'm a little upset that College Game Day decided not to go there. They're going back to Alabama. We saw how miserable that show was when Alabama and Texas played at the beginning of the season. The crowd just did not show up for College Game Day. And so for game day to decide to go back there again, obviously it's a ranked matchup, and I get that this is too. I even think that th- there was a better matchup in the SEC with Georgia and Missouri. But nonetheless, we're gonna have to sit through that on Saturday morning. Or if you want, we made it our game of the week for Out of the Tunnel. So make sure you guys stop by. We'll be doing a full preview of this game and getting you ready for that, keys to the game, all that stuff. So make sure you check us out Saturday morning. Nice little plug there for us. But just looking at these standings, I mean, you have 4, 5. 5 teams sitting at 4-1. Kansas and West Virginia at 3-2. They're still in the race. Kansas, they still have a difficult schedule ahead here. They go to Iowa State this weekend. And then they still have to play Kansas State down the line. West Virginia has a pretty difficult schedule ahead as well. They still have to play Oklahoma down the line. Um, so even though they're at 3-2 and things look difficult ahead, I mean, you could say the same thing for everybody above them. Texas doesn't have an easy path the rest of the season, nor does Oklahoma State. Just brought up Bedlam. They have to play Iowa State later this season as well. And then Oklahoma I really feel like the loss is gonna do one of 2 things to them. It's either gonna, get them refocused, get them motivated going forward, or it's kinda gonna be like "Oh, shit, here we go again" moment, and things can quickly come off the rails for Oklahoma. I like to believe that this is the kinda loss that wakes them up, but now you have to head into your most bitter I would say your most bitter rival, to play them again on the road. And there's a lot of tension between not just the players but the schools as well. So there might be pressure from you know people in the athletic department about how much this game is going to mean, and so on and so forth. So that's a matchup I'm really excited for this weekend. But the, what I'm getting at here is basically a few weeks ago we sat here and said it's okay. We're going to see Texas and Oklahoma back for sure, and we floated well who might be there. And now all of a sudden it looks like that for sure thing isn't really a sure thing anymore. And it's gonna be a fun race to watch the rest of the Big 12 unfold. If I had to give my prediction right now for who still survives and makes it through, I'm gonna go with Texas and Oklahoma still. Oklahoma State still has to play Texas as well. Um, so not the easiest schedule for everybody. And I feel like the Big 12 is um, going to inherit the Pac-12 moniker of being the cannibalistic conference. And, you have these premier teams who are destined to seemingly win national championships or at least compete for them. And they just, have dumb losses or, they year in, year out have to continue to play the best teams in the conference. And that's kind of what devours them. And you never see anybody make it out of the conference to the playoff. And so with the Pac-12 seemingly dissolving, or we don't know what's going on there yet. I guess the Big 12 thought it'd be the conference to kind of absorb that crown and take it home for themselves. But it's going to be very, very fun to watch this unfold the rest of the season, and I'm very excited for it. Let's go in or let's go ahead, excuse me, and we'll talk about wrapping up week 9 here. The most best or the biggest surprise, and then the most disappointing team from this past weekend. I think the most disappointing team has to be um, Oklahoma. Just with everything they had in front of them, they had their scare against UCF. That was supposed to wake them up. And then hey, we're gonna go on the road. Kansas is pretty good, but they're down their starting quarterback. They have a bunch of other issues, injury wise and stuff. And you can't blame it on the weather delay, but obviously the weather delay did not help things. And so you turn around, you lose that game. That obviously is gonna suck a lot. I think another kind of name to throw out there, and the reason I didn't say this first is Utah. Obviously, they're dealing with a ton of injuries. Um, but as hyped up as that crowd was for, McAfee's show on Friday and the College game day on Saturday, I guess this is more so directed at the fans. Obviously, you're getting your ass beat, and I get not wanting to sit there, but just seeing the stands empty and it's so talked about how prestigious, the Utah fan base is and uh, their home sellout streak and the 29 game winning streak at home, and it's one of the toughest places to play in the country. Just to see that was kind of disappointing in its own right. Um, Most surprising team, I'm going to go with Indiana. Penn State came off of the Ohio State loss. They were kind of licking their wounds a little bit, and Iowa was taking it to Penn State for a solid 3.5 quarters. It took until almost late in the fourth quarter for Penn State to really kind of flex and pull away. Um, and the other one I'm going to talk about is Louisville. Very impressed with how they played. Duke coming off that heartbreaking loss. Obviously, they're still dealing with injuries and stuff, but at any time you can have a ranked team come to your place and you shut them out 23 to nothing, it's very impressive. And I very very impressed with how they played, especially like as I had mentioned before, my concern with them is they went on the road, they got their ass beat by Pitt, and then they had to sit with that for a week. The dejection of losing a game like that, especially when you were the week before you were, at the top of the pyramid. It felt like you upset Notre Dame at home, and things looked so good for your program. You go on the road, you get trounced by Pitt, and then I turn around, you have to play another very good team in Duke coming to town. So to be able to play that well and shut them out 23 to nothing was definitely a huge surprise to see and well deserved. Yeah, that was very awesome to see Louisville bounce back in a way, and now with UNC struggling the last 2 weeks, that opens the door. It's a clear path basically at this point for Louisville and Florida State to meet for the ACC title game in a month. That's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. So with week 9 behind us, let's go ahead and look at the updated standings. This got tight very quick between the 3 of us for our pick standings. Slade has now officially overtaken Nick for the lead. He sits 1 game up, and then I close the gap on Nick, and I am tied with him 1 game back. So, just a few weeks ago, Nick had like a 6, 7 game lead on me alone. And now here we are, we're sitting, and even just 2 weeks ago, I think he was actually up double digits on me, or almost double. I think it was 9. But rough week for him. He went 6-11. Slade went 10-7, and I went 11-6. So this is what we fought for all season, and here we are with just 4 weeks left. It's going to get interesting. Our cash out records, it was not a good week for any of us. Nick went 0-2, as did I, but I'm still sitting above 500. I will take it. I'll take 500 and above any day of the week. Slade is the only one of us that got a victory this past week. He went 1 and 1. He's now sits at 6-15-1. Hey, he got a win. That's all you can ask for there. But like I said, I'll just be happy if I can finish the season at 500 or above. I'm feeling really good about my picks so far this weekend. So make sure you guys tune in Saturday morning to see those. We'll also post those on a TikTok as soon as we are done with Out of the Tunnel. I'm really excited for this weekend. I will actually be heading up to Appalachian State. I'm going to see their game against Marshall. First time I've had a chance to get up there and see a football game in person, so I get to check it off my bucket list back here. I'm really excited to do that. I know it's a beautiful campus and surroundings, so that's going to be a ton of fun. If you guys see this and you go to App State or you're going to be at that game, make sure you let me know. I'd love to see some of you guys, and it'd be very cool to hang out. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and we're going to dive into our Thursday and Friday picks. We're looking at 2 games this week. First up is going to be on Thursday. We have TCU visiting Texas Tech, 2 teams that are falling well below what their expectations were in the Big 12, not even nationally at this point. This will be Thursday at 7 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Nick and Slade are both going to go with Texas Tech. And you know what? I'm going to join them too. I like Texas Tech in this. The 2 teams that are, again, kind of subpar of what we expected. But Texas Tech being at home, I think, gives them a slight edge. TCU is coming off another drubbing. And I really expect Texas Tech to kind of bounce back and get, a little momentum here to move forward through the rest of the season. They're still desperately fighting just to make a bowl game at this point. So I really expect them to come out and play well, and kind of inch closer towards that goal. Next game we're going to look at is Friday night in an ACC matchup. We have Boston College at Syracuse. Boston College is red hot right now. Syracuse is ice cold. They've lost 4 straight. They're coming off a 3-game road trip where they lost all 3 games. The latest one was getting their ass beat at Virginia Tech last Thursday. Slade and Nick here are both going to take Boston College. It's hard for me to pick against Boston College, especially they're on a little win streak here. They're in a position where a lot of people, me especially, did not think they'd be fighting for a bowl game, and now all of a sudden here they are. They just need one more win to go to a bowl, um, and so I'm going to go with Syracuse here. I really feel like taking the ass beating on the road for the last 3 weeks like they have, it's going to feel good to get home and play in front of your home crowd. I don't know how many people are going to show up given what's happened the last 4 weeks now. Um, but Boston College has also given me a lot of concern in their wins, especially this past week against UConn. That game was at home, and I'd said this on Saturday when I made UConn my upset alert because they were 14-point underdogs. They like to play people close, so they're gonna play teams close. But this Boston College team is not complete. I would say they've had very good games, that Georgia Tech game especially, but they've also shown games where they are either one dimensional or they have nothing at all. And so I really feel like Syracuse is going to be determined to stop this skid. They still need 2 wins to get to a bowl game. They're going to be very determined. This is a game where they can win that they have upcoming. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with Syracuse here at home. I like the orange here. So that'll do it for this week's edition of the Blitz Boys. As always, we thank you guys so much for checking us out. As previously stated, make sure you drop a like and a subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next video.